Hello and welcome again to this edition of Phi TV, a product of Florida Internet and Television, the industry that connects about 95% of Floridians to their favorite internet and television channels. I'm your host, Brad Swanson, and we are joined by none other than Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Patronis. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so you do a million things in the CFO position.
I do.
Chief Fire Marshal, we see out there on these great issues, but lately, other than blowing up Elon Musk and saying, get your business to Florida,
Right.
I mean, he must be like, what's this guy doing again?
Leave me alone.
You've really been looking at some of these kind of more nefarious threads and trends out there that, potentially, well, not potentially, they harm economies, and they're kind of these stealthy deals. And what I'm referring to is ESG.
Yep.
You've been out there on that. You've been out there on a few other things, and we're going to get to those. But let's start there, because we've seen you all over the talk shows on that one. What's going on with ESG?
So ESG is environmental, social, and governance. So, the state of Florida, we have a massive pension fund, and I'm also the treasurer for the state. So I've got several $1 billion under management, $60 billion plus $1 billion under management. But it's the state's checking account. It's a money market, all right? I'm investing it because we can't spend it all at once. There's recurring bills all during the year.
Sure.
So some of these fund managers have said, well, man, why don't we take those dollars and we're going to go and push out our own political and social agenda with it. And we may not necessarily looking for the best return on investment, but we're going to do what's right in at least my mind or in my philosophy or in my corporate governance, maybe not in the best interest of the Florida taxpayer. And we wake up and we realize we do our own due diligence. And these guys, look, I tell people all the time, just do your job. Just do your job.
Right.
But when you want to start to draw attention to yourself because you want to pat yourself on the back that you're doing the right thing for the tree frogs in some third world country, that's great.
Right.
Just do it with your own money.
Even more nefarious, that gets so big and up to such high levels globally that they're affecting insurance companies and telling them not to write policies for legal, businesses in the United States that might be gun manufacturers or whatever, insurance policies in places and states that might not have the same philosophical beliefs that others.
Absolutely, or they'll make it harder for reinsurance companies or insurance companies to get access to capital to drive down rates unless they embrace ESG policies.
Right.
And and these are the same hypocrites that condemn any type of third world country development. Like you take Africa, for example, they don't want any coal-fired plants there.
Right.
But they will gladly send all their money to China that's building coal-fired plants left and right.
They'll also buy all the cell phones and gadgets out of the cobalt mines that are being,
that's right.
Their conscience is variable from day to day and based upon, how their agendas are fulfilled, it seems.
So it gets, but so Paul Renner and we got HB3. We're going to make sure that ESG is very transparent. We're not going to force ESG credit scoring on our local governments. We're not going to let it be part of the procurement process. And we're going to be focused on getting the absolute best deal for the citizens of the state of Florida. When it comes to ESG borrowing, there are those players, if you're going to abide by it, it's a 1% to 1.5% more in doing business or return on investment.
When you're talking about $60 billion, that's a big number that Florida's missing out on. All right, so let's move to our next favorite thing, the IRS.
Yeah.
We got new agents. We saw that was revealed very publicly that there was some a hand on the scale of who they were auditing, and it was people that weren't necessarily philosophically and aligned with previous administrations. So talk to us about what you're doing about that.
So with the Inflation Reduction Act, which I think did about as much for lowering inflation. Jerome Powell said it yesterday. He said, look, we've got a problem with inflation, and we know we got a problem with inflation. So, we've got a federal government that has been asleep at the wheel. But again, they're continuing to push an agenda that is costing those that can least afford it more money. So we saw this massive expansion of the IRS and the Inflation Reduction Act. They're going to invest $80 billion in the IRS in order to receive an additional $250 billion in revenue. So in order to capture this new money, they need new boots on the ground. So this business model expanded the IRS by 87,000 agents. To me is a concern because wealth has moved to Florida with Biden's new proposed increase on income taxes for those making over $400,000 or more. You're going to see more people fleeing from California, New York. New York, if you live in New York City, your income taxes are going to be almost 60% a year.
Whoa.
Between what's going to go to the feds, the state, the local. So they will leave, they will come to the states of Florida, and the IRS will just follow the money.
Yeah.
So we're putting out some positions. We're working with Rep. Oberdorf and Senator Angolia now, to push back on the IRS. And look, we're just making sure there's transparency. We're going to be stuck with this hot mess of legislation.
Right.
We want to make sure the citizens of the state of Florida are protected. So we've got some protections in place as far as even helping our people fight legal battles with the IRS, to making sure that there are charges brought against those IRS agents that are profiling like they did the Tea Party groups.
Think about that for a second. I mean, you think about where we are today. We were talking before we started shooting today about when we were young bucks. I mean, the idea that a government program would be out there to help you defend against bad actors of the federal government would have been mind-blowing. And we would have been like, no way does America ever get there. And here we are today, needing to protect Floridians. And thankfully, we've got great folks like the Speaker and Kathleen Passidomo and the Governor and yourself out there advocating for these great policies.
Well, I tell you, and opening day of session, I'm so excited for that. And because you think about all these men and women who have put their name on the ballot because they want to do good for the citizens of the state of Florida. So, I mean, yesterday is definitely it's one of those days like I feed off of. And again, to your point, we've got great leadership.
Yeah, it energizes all of us who are advocates in that same vein. All right, so let's move to the other global threat, which is communist China. They've invented an app that all of my kids are addicted to, and it's called TikTok. So give the backstory on where the TikTok software has gone and the dangers it's proposing, and then what are we doing in Florida to kind of mitigate what we can from the dangers of this application? Sure.
So TikTok it's an app that's become very sticky. Once our children gets in our children's hands, they can't put it down. And look, I think there's other products out there that are just as bad. I mean, we can call out, YouTube Shorts. We can call out Instagram Reels that our children tend to.
Wait! I got to look at a few reels here.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. But what has got me concerned about TikTok is China has this long history of stealing U.S. intellectual property. So we spend more money for research than any other country in the world. I don't want TikTok on our university campuses. I don't want to be able to give a backdoor access to the devices that the next generation of innovators have in their hands.
Yeah.
So, University of Texas and Texas as a whole, I believe, statewide, they've banned it. We banned it 2 years ago in our office. We have a lot of sensitive stuff that goes in and out of Department of Financial Services. So again, I'm just saying, guys, let's just push back.
And let's be clear, the app doesn't stop within the confines of its programming within your phone. It has repeatedly been proven, and really it only came to light when Apple found out that TikTok was crawling into its firmware.
Sure.
And they were fine with it until they realized it was stealing their secrets too.
Sure.
And then they raised it, and then it became, Senator Rubio has been out there, a friend of ours, belaboring this point of how dangerous this app is. So we're clearing it off the state's platforms and anything kind of owned and controlled by the state of Florida, and to ultimately protect our research.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
And in Washington, there is definitely a bipartisan effort to try to ban it. But again, if even like Representative Burgess, he has got some legislation that really wants to protect our children from social media, because again, it's very addictive, and I get worried about the productivity and development of our children when they're spending all their time on their devices. Man, I told my boys the other day, I said, man, when I was your age, I was out riding my bicycle, I was out playing neighborhood football. You got to just kick them out of the house or take their devices from them.
Of course. Well, you've got your two boys, and I got my kids, and while they love their TikTok, it's like stay on the field, play more lacrosse, and just stay active. And
stay active.
Just put your phones down. All right, so let's take it to another level. We've talked about this before in the past, but I want to bring you back to it. When the towers came down in in South Florida. There was the initial legislation. We're still seeing more kind of renters' bill of rights and things like that legislation going on. Where is Florida now versus where we were when that tragedy happened? Because I don't want to take you back through it because it was some very difficult stuff. But talk to us about where we are today on that.
We learn something from every disaster. We're learning things from Hurricane Ian, and here's a perfect example. I was in Sarasota County about 2 weeks after the storm. I was there with the sheriff. We were touring his 911 operations center, and so I'm meeting his 911 operators. And through about that 48-hour period of the storm, they handled about 30,000 911 calls. Yeah. They had people that actually died on the phone with them. And so it's incredibly traumatic, and we realize, it is what it is. When people deal with that type of trauma, it affects them. It affects them. So I'm advocating with Rep. McFarland and then Senator Burgess to make sure that, look, if a 911 operator wants to have access to PTSD treatment, that they get it. The jobs that work 24/7, 365 that we take for granted are the reasons why we have good schools, why we have quality investment, why people relocate to the state, and those incredible public servants that give us that peace of mind and quality of life. Sometimes we need to have their back just like they always have ours.
Well, and on that first responders piece, as the chief fire marshal, you have been utterly entrenched with both the challenges of firefighters needing, even to the challenges they still face today from 9/11 to, when the towers fell, to hurricane response. These are the people and really the families, because it fully, impacts the entirety of the family when that first responder is there. Tell me about your work with that community, and you've looked out for issues for them, both financially and leave and all sorts of stuff. Tell me about that community and your work with them.
So it's so cool that they grow up as a child and all they dream about is being a firefighter or being a law enforcement officer, and they want to be that community hero. And once they get the job, they're proud, they wear the uniform, they answer the call 24/7, 365. But there's realities with the job that have trauma that they just don't have the ability to get from. With our firefighters, they have the challenges of dealing with sometimes hazardous chemicals, hazardous side effects of their job that lead to cancers or other types of diseases. So look, let's just lean forward. You know what? We need to have a robust first responder community, and we should make sure we're giving them the peace of mind that we've got their back. Well, so it's what makes this place so great.
I love it. Well, we know your social media feed is always robust, telling those exact stories. We're grateful that you come on Fight TV to share your stories with us, so we can also push these great stories out. We'll look for whatever you're pushing out next, because you are one of the social media fiends. And my final one second. What do you like to stream? What are you watching these days when you're not doing this very important work?
So, I've been trying to get my wife into to finishing up Ted Lasso with me. And, so it's so funny. I've got this British friend, and I was telling him the other day, I said, have you ever watched Ted Lasso? He goes, no, what is it? So he has Apple TV. So anyway, he said, brilliant. I'm glad you turned me on to it. I said, was it really like that? He said, I don't care. He said, I just enjoyed it. Yeah. And so, it's crazy how the world has changed. I did go take my boys the other day, and we saw the what Ant-Man? It was the
Into the multiverse or something like that.
Yeah, but we went and saw the new Creed movie.
Yes. Oh, good.
Yes. So you know what we did? I sat down with my boys this past weekend, and we watched Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 together.
Right.
And and they loved Creed. I said, man, wait till you see Rocky 3.
Yeah.
And so there's still something
that's awesome.
Really enjoyable about sitting down with your kids and catching up.
There is. I could talk movies and watching movies with the kids all day long, but that's all the time we have for this segment. But we're grateful that we have you on, Jimmy. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, CFO. That's all the time we have for this episode of Fight TV. For more great interviews like this one, make sure you hit us up on our social media feeds. And for now, thanks for tuning in.